My name is Rachel Monroe. I'm 33 years old, and this morning I was fired, before I even finished my coffee. It wasn't some dramatic scene with shouting or broken glass. No, that would have made more sense. It was quiet, controlled, polished, even. The kind of firing you rehearse in front of a mirror if you're the type of person who thinks spreadsheets say more about people than people do. Melissa Grant was exactly that type. I'd barely walked into Crescent Ridge Media's Uptown Charlotte office when I got the email. Please come to my office, 9 o'clock sharp. Subject line, blink. No punctuation. That was Melissa's version of drama. I should have seen it coming. The half day I'd taken last Thursday, dental appointment on my calendar, was actually for an interview at BlueHorizon Strategies, a client I'd carried through crises, expansions, 2 rebrands, and 5 marketing directors. I'd asked for a raise 3 times in as many years. Denied. Every time. Budget realignment, she said, while signing contracts for rooftop mixers and celebrity brand consultants. Still, I was loyal. Stupidly loyal. I thought if I kept delivering, they'd eventually see me. Melissa didn't even let me sit before she said it. I consider this disloyal. Her voice was a scalpel, smooth and cold. I blinked. She cut me off. Don't bother denying it. I have confirmation you met with Ethan Chambers at BlueHorizon. Thursday. I swallowed. My mouth was suddenly dry. I wasn't planning to leave without notice. I needed to. Your building access has already been revoked. Security will escort you to your desk. My stomach dropped. It felt like standing up too fast and too high, like the edge of a rooftop with no railing. 6 years. Late nights, client emergencies, a literal hurricane campaign pivot done from my backup generator. And this was how it ended. Before I can continue my story, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. Tell me where you're listening from and what time it is right now. I want to know who's with me in this moment. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. My parents used to say I was the one with a plan. I color-coded everything. Even my childhood bookshelves had logic. Mysteries on the left, fantasy in the middle, nonfiction on the right. At family cookouts, I was the cousin keeping track of time and napkins. My siblings laughed, but they leaned on me. I was the one who did everything right. Good grades, college on a scholarship, first one to buy a car, first one to move out, first one to land a job in a high-rise with floor-to-ceiling windows. So maybe that's why this morning hit harder than it should have. Because part of me still believed the system would reward good behavior. Spoiler, it didn't. When I stood up to leave Melissa's office, I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I just nodded and said, I wish Crescent Ridge continued success. Her eyes narrowed, like she wasn't expecting that. Honestly, I wasn't either.
The security guard didn't say much, just hovered behind me as I packed up the last 6 years of my life into a cardboard box that once held reams of printer paper. He looked young, maybe fresh out of college, the same way I'd once been. He kept shifting awkwardly, probably unsure if I was about to cry or cause a scene. I didn't either. Instead, I took my time. Not out of defiance, though maybe a little, but mostly because I wanted to remember. I touched the edge of the desk I'd stand in myself to get rid of the chip no one from facilities ever fixed. I ran my fingers along the spine of the campaign pitch book I'd made for BlueHorizon's product launch last fall. I lifted the tiny ceramic cactus I bought from that boutique in Nashville the weekend before I closed the biggest deal of my career. It all fit, somehow. A 6-year career condensed into one box. I passed a few coworkers on my way out, Most pretended not to see me. A couple offered tentative smiles. One of them, Tina from reception, caught my eye, then immediately looked away. Her cheeks flushed. She'd always been sweet. Maybe she didn't know what to say. Honestly, I didn't either. The elevator ride down was silent. No music. Just the soft hum of electricity and my heart thudding in my ears. I felt hollow. Like someone had scooped out my insides and left a polite shell behind. I wasn't humiliated. Not exactly. But I was stripped. Like something had been taken from me I didn't even know I'd been holding on to. Outside, the sun hit me like a dare. It was way too bright for the day I was having. Birds chirped. People hustled past with iced coffees and Bluetooth earbuds, like the world hadn't just upended. It felt rude somehow that the earth kept spinning. I placed the box in the trunk of my car, shut it gently, and then just stood there, staring at the building. I didn't realize how much I'd shaped my identity around that skyline view, those long strategy sessions, those damn Friday donut meetings where I'd always eat one and regret too. And now, nothing. I drove home on autopilot, familiar streets blurred into a silent blur. My phone buzzed once, an unknown number. I ignored it. Then again, this time it was Mike Alvarez, Crescent Ridge IT, also Carla's boyfriend. Hey, Tina told me. Everyone's talking. Melissa said you were terminated for breach of loyalty. Her exact words. Breach of loyalty. The phrase stung more than I expected. Like I'd cheated on a partner, not asked for what I was worth in a job. I pressed my forehead against the steering wheel when I pulled into the parking garage. Betrayal wasn't the firing. It was the erasure. Like everything I'd done, everything I'd built could be wiped clean because I wanted more. I picked up my box, balancing it awkwardly against my hip, and climbed the stairs to my apartment. Each step heavier than the last, not from the weight of the box, but from the weight of not knowing what came next. Inside, I set the box down on the counter, just stared at it. 6 years in cardboard. My whole career reduced to 15 pounds of paper and ceramic. It sat there like it was waiting for me to crack open. But I wasn't ready.
I kept replaying Melissa's voice in my head, like a loop I couldn't pause. I consider this disloyal. Like I'd stabbed her in the back for daring to attend one interview. One! The part that really got me, was how calm she was. Not even angry, just cold, controlled. Like I'd spilled coffee on her rug instead of giving 6 years of my life to that company. It wasn't personal to her, but to me, it was everything. She'd always had that smile, tight-lipped, barely stretched, like her mouth had a budget. That smile appeared during every review where I brought spreadsheets showing market averages, client growth, revenue spikes I personally negotiated. And every time she said the same thing, "We're in a conservative year. Infrastructure comes first. You're invaluable, but there's just no room in the numbers." But there was room for rooftop client dinners, for upgraded standing desks, for her Audi with the custom leather seats. 3 years. I asked 3 times, not for the moon, just for a number that matched my title, my workload, my results. And every time she'd smile that same polished smile, murmur something about timing, and suggest I keep building leverage. Leverage. I was the leverage. I was the reason BlueHorizon stayed after their last reorg. When their last rep flaked on a deadline, I spent an entire weekend in the office fixing it. No overtime, no bonus. Just another, "You really came through." And yeah, I came through, again and again, until the day I asked for more than thanks. That's what Melissa couldn't forgive, that I stopped waiting. I leaned over the counter, arms shaking under the weight of that one line. "I have confirmation you met with Ethan." She'd said it like a prosecutor, like she'd caught me plotting a heist, not applying for a job I had more than earned. I wasn't even planning to leave immediately. I was going to wait for the offer, give 2 weeks, write a transition plan like a damn professional. But none of that mattered. All she saw was a crack in my loyalty, and she slammed the door before I could explain. It hit me like a punch. She never thought of me as a leader, just an asset, replaceable, until I proved I wasn't, and that made me dangerous. My phone buzzed again. Carla. "She fired you? Are you okay? I swear I'm about to storm her office myself." I stared at the screen for a second, then called her. "I'm okay," I said, and my voice cracked on the okay. "I mean, I'm not, but I will be." "You did everything right, Rach. Everything." My throat closed up. I gave so much, and she made it feel like nothing. There was silence on the line. Then, "She's threatened by you. Always has been. You remind her of the version of herself she couldn't hold on to." I didn't respond right away, but deep down, I knew Carla was right. Melissa had once been the rising star. Now she clung to power like a life raft, and people like me, we were storms she couldn't control. I hung up and looked back at the box on the counter. Not everything in that box was mine to carry anymore.
It was around 11:15 when my phone buzzed again, this time with a message that made me freeze mid-sip of lukewarm coffee. "Ethan Chambers, can you come in at 2 p.m. today instead of Friday?" For a second, I thought maybe I'd imagined it. I blinked, read it again, and then I smiled for the first time all day. Ethan, the CEO of BlueHorizon Strategies, the man who'd once told me, "You're the only one who seems to hear what we're not saying." He was the reason I'd even considered leaving, not because he offered me a job. He hadn't. Not yet. But because he saw me, saw what I brought to the table, and never once asked me to prove it twice. I texted back, "Yes, I'll be there." Then I stood in the middle of my apartment, still barefoot, still in the same clothes I wore to my own firing, and let the panic rush in. I had 3 hours to pull myself together. In the shower, I scrubbed like I was trying to erase the way Melissa had made me feel. The shame, the hurt, the hollow pit in my chest. I let the water burn it off. When I stepped out, I was red-faced, eyes glassy, and for the first time in months, I didn't feel small. I chose my navy pantsuit, not the black one I wore to client meetings, not the one I'd worn to award ceremonies. This one was sharp, unassuming, and cut perfectly at the shoulders. It was my new beginning suit. I'd bought it on impulse 3 months ago, not knowing why. Now I did. I applied my makeup with steady hands, not to hide anything, but to frame the woman I wanted to see again. I brushed my hair back, slid on the watch I wore during every big presentation, and stared at my reflection. The same face Melissa looked at like it was a threat. Maybe it was. As I drove to the BlueHorizon building, sleek, all glass and sky, I felt the weight shift in me. Not lifted, not yet, but redistributed. Melissa may have pushed me out, but I had already started walking. I just hadn't realized it until the ground disappeared beneath me. The lobby smelled like eucalyptus and expensive confidence. As I approached the elevator,
One of the junior analysts I'd worked with, Deja, passed me and grinned. "Rachel Monroe? You're here on a good day," she said with a wink. I smiled back. "Am I?" She leaned in like we were co-conspirators. "Everyone's hoping you'll join us. Just saying." The elevator dinged and I stepped inside. 30 floors later, the doors opened to sunlight and glass walls and Ethan Chambers standing there with 2 coffees in hand. He said, "Glad you could make it," offering one to me. "Glad I could," I replied, accepting it like a lifeline. We walked through open space, past people who'd seen me only as an account manager before. Now, I wasn't sure what they saw, but it felt different. Ethan led me into a modest corner office with 2 armchairs, not a desk between us, and that felt like a clue. "You want the short version?" he asked, settling into the seat across from me. I nodded. He smiled. "This isn't an interview. It's a conversation that should have happened a long time ago."
I sat across from Ethan Chambers, coffee in hand, trying not to let the sudden quiet of the room swallow me whole. It wasn't an interview, he'd made that clear, but something about the way he leaned forward, elbows on his knees, eyes steady, told me this conversation still mattered. This wasn't a handout, it was a test of trust, of timing, of whether I was ready to take up space in a new way. "You've probably guessed," Ethan began. "We weren't happy to hear Crescent Ridge pulled you off our account." I stayed still, measured. I didn't expect that call to be made without my input either. He nodded slowly, like he appreciated the restraint in my answer. "We've had concerns for a while. Delays, disconnected communication. When you weren't leading the conversation, things drifted." I swallowed. My throat was dry again. "I'm sorry you had to deal with that." "Don't be. That's not why we're here." He leaned back now, more relaxed. "Rachel, you've been holding that account together for years. Most of us know it. Melissa, she might have seen it too, but I think she resented it." I didn't respond. I didn't need to. The silence said enough. He reached beside him, pulled out a folder, and slid it across the coffee table. We were already discussing creating this role, Director of Strategic Partnerships. We need someone to oversee all of our agency relationships, not just manage them, but evolve them. I opened the folder, read the title, read the numbers, then read them again. It was almost double what I made at Crescent Ridge. Full benefits, leadership over a new team of 5, a real seat at the table. I felt something bloom in my chest. Not joy, not yet, but something stronger than survival, like roots pushing through concrete. "This is generous," I said quietly, fingers still on the page. "It's appropriate," he corrected. "You've earned this long before today." That's when it hit me. Melissa had been afraid of me because she saw something I hadn't yet seen in myself. Influence, power, not the kind that shouts or bullies, but the kind that gets things done so quietly, people don't realize the room depended on you until you're gone. At Crescent Ridge, I was just an account manager on paper. But in practice, I was the reason 1/3 of their revenue showed up every quarter. I had been their infrastructure, their stability, their reputation. And they'd tossed me out like a liability. Ethan stood and extended his hand. "Take the night, look it over, call me in the morning. But just so you know, your office is already reserved." As we walked back to the elevator, Geisha passed us again. This time, she didn't say anything. She just smiled like she knew exactly what had happened in that room. I stepped into the elevator alone, clutching the folder against my chest like a secret. On the ride down, something uncurled inside me. Maybe Melissa fired me because she thought I was slipping away. But the truth was, I was never hers to keep. I didn't sleep much that night. The folder sat on my kitchen table like a sealed future,
I must have read it 3 times. Not just the salary, though, God, that number made my breath catch, but the words, Director of Strategic Partnerships. It sounded official, powerful, and yet it felt natural. Like I'd already grown into that role long ago, just no one had given it a name. Or a title. Or permission. I kept thinking about Melissa. The way she looked at me across her desk like I was a traitor, like I'd betrayed her by daring to want something better. I didn't feel angry anymore. Just sad, I think, that she'd never seen the difference between someone loyal and someone trapped. At 2 a.m., I stood barefoot on my balcony, the Charlotte skyline blinking in the distance. The breeze was warm, thick with summer rain that hadn't yet fallen. I held the offer letter in my hands, unsigned, but mentally, I already knew. I'd sign it in the morning. This wasn't desperation. This was clarity. They hadn't fired me. They'd freed me. When I woke up, there was a text from Carla. Are you alive or dramatically staring into space somewhere? Update me. I grinned, took a photo of the BlueHorizon letter on my table, and sent it to her with a single word. Tomorrow. Carla replied in all caps. You better be kidding me. You're in. Holy shit. Then a second text. Wait, did Melissa see this yet? She hadn't. Not yet. But Crescent Ridge would feel it soon enough. The drive to the office felt different. I wasn't visiting a place to beg for something. I was stepping into a space that already made room for me. When I walked in, Deja waved me through without a word. It was like a silent welcome committee. People nodded, smiled, not just polite smiles, the kind that say, "We're glad you're here." My new office wasn't massive, but it had windows that stretched the length of the wall. Sunlight poured across the desk, catching on the small potted fern someone had placed there. There was a nameplate already, Rachel Monroe, Director. I ran my fingers over it slowly. My laptop was set up. My email access was live. My calendar had one meeting already scheduled for Monday. Team welcome, 10 a.m. I sat down in the chair, leather and firm, and looked out over the skyline. The same city, a different view. Just as I was about to log in, a ping hit my inbox. Subject line, "Welcome to the team." It was from Ethan, short, to the point. "We're lucky to have you. Let's build something better." I sat back in my chair and exhaled. For 6 years, I gave everything to a company that couldn't give me a title upgrade, let alone a sense of belonging. And now, in the space of 24 hours, I had both. What Melissa meant to be a punishment had turned into a reset, a quiet revolution, the end of one version of me and the beginning of someone I hadn't let myself imagine until now.
I didn't expect the call from Judith Parker. It came just after 5 p.m., right as I was shutting down my new work laptop for the weekend. Unknown number. I hesitated, but something told me to answer. "Rachel Monroe?" the voice said. "Yes, this is she." "This is Judith Parker, board member at Crescent Ridge. I understand there was an incident involving your employment earlier this week. I'd like to speak with you directly." She didn't say firing, didn't say mistake, just incident. Classic damage control language. I stayed quiet. "I'm available tomorrow morning at 9. Would you be willing to meet me at our offices?" I paused for maybe 2 full seconds. "I can do that, but I want to be clear, I've already accepted another position." There was a pause on her end this time. "I understand. This isn't an attempt to reverse your decision, just a conversation." I agreed. But in my gut, I knew exactly what this was. Crescent Ridge was trying to contain a leak after the flood had already hit the server room. The next morning, I put on the same navy suit, not to impress, not even out of habit, but because I wanted them to see that I still stood tall, that I hadn't shrunk under the weight of their mistake. Tina at reception looked startled when I walked in. "Rachel, I didn't know you were..." "It's okay," I smiled softly. "I'm here for a meeting with Judith Parker." She nodded and lowered her voice. "Just so you know, things have been tense, really tense." The elevator ride was oddly familiar, like muscle memory dragging me through a place that no longer belonged to me. But I wasn't here to reclaim anything. I was here to say goodbye the right way. Judith was already seated when I arrived. Silver hair, crisp navy blazer, and a leather-bound notebook in front of her. She stood to shake my hand. "Ms. Monroe, thank you for coming." "Of course," I replied, sitting opposite her. She opened the notebook, glanced at something. "Your personnel file shows 6 years of high performance, strong client retention, and multiple formal requests for compensation review. All denied." I raised an eyebrow. "That's correct." She closed the notebook slowly. "There's no documentation supporting your termination, no breach of contract, no warning." I said nothing. "This is unusual, disappointing," she added, though her voice betrayed nothing. I wanted to laugh, not because it was funny, but because now they cared. Now that Blue Horizon was on shaky ground, now that Melissa had made a decision that might cost them more than my salary ever would have. "We'd like to offer reinstatement, with the raise you originally requested, plus a 10% increase and the title of Senior Account Director." It was a good offer, on paper, but it came 3 years and one public humiliation too late. "I appreciate that," I said calmly, "but I've already started a new role, and it's where I'm supposed to be." Judith gave a small nod. "May I ask, what could Crescent Ridge have done differently?" I looked at her then, not with anger, but with clarity. I said, "Seen me, before I had to go somewhere else to be visible." She folded her hands. "A fair answer." When I left that boardroom, I didn't look back. Not because I didn't care, but because for the first time, I didn't have to. I was still in my new office, unpacking my own box of personal items this time. Photos, notebooks, that little ceramic cactus, when the email came through. Subject line: Transition Timeline, Crescent Ridge to Clarity South Creative. It was from the executive team. And just like that, it was official. Blue Horizon wasn't just moving on from Melissa. They were moving on from Crescent Ridge entirely, and I would be managing the transfer. The irony sat like honey and vinegar in my mouth. I didn't even have to lift a finger. No sabotage, no drama, just time and truth. Melissa's mistake had rippled outward. The client she once bragged about landing personally, their golden goose, was now flying out the door, and I was the one holding the flight itinerary. What struck me most was how little satisfaction I felt. No gloating, no revenge speech, just a strange calm, like watching a fire die out after warning someone the wiring was bad. I thought about the way Melissa looked at me that last day, tight-jawed, composed, like she was doing me a favor by pushing me out. Maybe she thought Crescent Ridge would scare me back into line.
Maybe she thought BlueHorizon would drop me the second I wasn't tied to her signature. She underestimated both of us. I clicked into the transition doc. Clean, professional, the kind of closure I never got from Crescent Ridge. That afternoon, Mike Alvarez texted me, just a screenshot of a Slack message thread. Melissa, team, we're entering a retention-sensitive quarter. All client leads must review protocol. Then a reply beneath it from someone I didn't recognize. Is that before or after we fire the ones holding our top accounts? I raised my eyebrows. Office mutiny in real time. Carla followed up a few minutes later. Melissa's on the edge. 3 other account managers updated their LinkedIn profiles this week. Pretty sure Tina's looking too. I typed back, not my circus, then deleted it. Instead, I just wrote, hope they find what they deserve. That night, I had dinner with Carla on her back patio. Summer air, string lights overhead, burgers from the grill. She looked at me over her glass of wine. You're really not going to say it? Say what? That you won. I took a sip. Let the silence stretch. It's not about winning. Carla rolled her eyes. Okay, Gandhi. I laughed, then paused. It's about walking away when someone shows you they never intended to see you and never needing to circle back just to prove you were right. She nodded. Still, that email though, delicious. I smiled, but my mind was elsewhere. On the team I'd meet Monday morning, the new ideas, the clean slate. I had spent so many years thinking my value was something I had to constantly prove, maintain, perform. Turns out, when you're in the right place, your value doesn't have to fight for breath. It just gets to be.
By the following Wednesday, the handoff was complete. BlueHorizon had transitioned to Clarity South Creative, a sleek agency out of Atlanta I'd admired for a while. Their deck was polished, their leadership dynamic. I'd helped vet them, quietly, discreetly, when the final decision was made. But I'd recused myself from voting. Too close, I said. Too personal. Ethan agreed, but he still let me oversee the process. Not because he needed me to, but because he trusted me to. That part still caught me off guard sometimes. Being trusted without having to earn it again from zero. I was the one who sent the formal wrap-up email to Crescent Ridge. Just business. Dates, deliverables, login transfers. Professional, dry. I imagined Melissa reading it. I pictured her face, tight, unreadable, furious but cornered. Not because I wanted her to suffer, but because I knew she never saw this coming. She thought removing me would stabilize things. Instead, I had been the thread holding everything in place. And when she cut it, everything unraveled. Tina messaged me that afternoon, Melissa's office is a war zone. Judith's been in there twice. Mike says she's making calls to try to replace the lost revenue already. No one's biting. I didn't gloat. I didn't screenshot it to my group chat. I just read it, then closed my phone. Because here's the thing about revenge. It's loud. It wants an audience. It wants recognition. But success? Success is quiet. It moves differently. It doesn't chase applause. It just grows. Steady, unbothered. And I was growing again. Every morning now, I walked into an office where my name was on the org chart, where my ideas didn't need to be filtered through someone else's ego before they were heard, where the work I'd been doing all along was finally recognized as strategic, not just extra helpful. It wasn't perfect. My team still challenged me.
The learning curve of managing multiple agency relationships was sharp and unrelenting, but it was mine to climb. I started mentoring one of the junior team members, Taylor, fresh out of grad school, smart as hell, and already asking the kind of questions I used to whisper to myself in the stairwell at Crescent Ridge. "Do you ever think you're being too ambitious?" she asked me once after a strategy session. I smiled. "Only around people who benefit from me being small." She wrote that down in her notes. I pretended not to notice. And I started noticing something else too. I laughed more. I slept better. I didn't grind my teeth through meetings or rehearse brave conversations in my head for weeks. My jaw unclenched. My posture shifted. Sometimes success isn't a single moment. Sometimes it's waking up and realizing you don't dread the day. That's it. That's the win. People still messaged me occasionally, old coworkers, a client or two. Some congratulated me, some asked for advice, a few wanted tea. But I kept my responses short and sweet, because I wasn't living in that story anymore. I'd closed the chapter, and this new one. A year later, almost to the day, I passed Crescent Ridge's building while walking to a client lunch. I hadn't meant to. The restaurant was new, tucked between a co-working space and a boutique hotel that hadn't existed back when I used to work in this part of Charlotte. Funny how the city moves on, builds around what you once thought was permanent. I slowed down a little as I walked by. Not enough to stare, just enough. The lobby looked the same. Marble floors, cold lights, a security guard who definitely didn't recognize me. I imagined Melissa still up on the 17th floor, pacing, planning, repositioning herself in meetings. But the power she once held over me? Gone. It dissolved the moment I realized I never needed her validation, just my own. I used to think doors closed with a bang, that you had to slam them shut to feel like they stayed closed. But this one? It had clicked behind me so quietly, I barely noticed until I was already somewhere else, somewhere better. That night, back in my apartment, I pulled out the old cardboard box, the one I'd carried out that day. It had been sitting on the top shelf of my closet for months, untouched. I opened it. Photos, sticky notes with old ideas scribbled in Sharpie, a branded Crescent Ridge mug I'd once thought looked impressive on my desk. I pulled out one of the notebooks, flipped through the pages filled with lists, deadlines, numbers, names. Then I closed it. Some things didn't need to be unpacked. I could donate the mug. The rest, maybe I'd keep a few pieces, reminders of how far I'd come. But the version of me who stayed late without acknowledgement, who walked on eggshells, who believed loyalty meant sacrificing yourself quietly, she wasn't here anymore. In her place was someone sharper, softer too in the ways that mattered, no longer bracing, no longer shrinking. Ethan once told me, sometimes the most important moves are the ones you never planned. He was right. I hadn't planned on being fired, but I also hadn't planned on getting free. And now when I meet with other women at networking events, strategy retreats, or even casual coffee dates, and they tell me they're tired, stuck, underpaid, overworked, I don't offer a silver bullet. I just say this: don't wait for someone else to give you permission to value yourself. That door you're afraid to walk through, it might just open to everything they told you didn't exist. That's what happened to me. The door I thought would slam behind me became the one that led me home. Funny how a box can feel like an ending until you realize it's just where your real story begins. This past year taught me that walking away isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That loyalty means nothing if it's only ever expected, never reciprocated, and that you don't have to burn bridges to stop crossing ones that lead nowhere. So here's my question for you. Have you ever stayed somewhere too long just because they made you believe leaving was a failure? If so, I hope this story helped you feel seen. Tell me your story in the comments. Let's build a space where we remind each other what self-worth sounds like. And if this resonated, like, subscribe, share. You never know who's carrying their own box right now, quietly wondering if they're alone. You're not. There's something better on the other side. Trust me, I walked through that door.